Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. Let me at the outset apologize for my voice. I've been fighting a chest infection, but nevertheless, I believe that I will have it still in me to communicate with the good people of this land. And in that context, let me start this evening by saying simply how very, 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 very proud I was of the delivery of the budget by the Honourable Member for Christchurch East Central. Mr. Speaker, delivering a budget is not an easy task. I think I can say a few things about it now, having had to do 6 on my own, and having had to do a number of responses to the budget as well in this Parliament. And I came up in the tradition that I would like to believe that most of us will want to stick to in this honorable chamber, where we treated this as a noble and very serious exercise. The Honourable Member for St. Peter, who equally spoke exceptionally well today, reminded us of the late Sir Richard Haynes. And those of us of my generation would recall debates between the Right Excellent Errol Barrow, the Honourable JMGM Tom Adams, and indeed in subsequent years, Sir Richard, and of course, the late Honourable Member for St. Peter, the Right Honourable Owen Seymour Arthur, who delivered more budgets than any other Member of Parliament in modern Barbados. And Mr. Speaker, the exercise of delivering a budget really is first and foremost to speak to how monies will be allocated and spent, or how monies would be raised in this honorable Parliament. And therefore it has context. It's not a State of the Union address, but we've taken the opportunity to be able to address other things. But in so addressing other things, sir, we've also taken the time to always make connection with the numbers and the programs in the budget. Mr. Speaker, we were treated for just over 10 hours to an exercise that took us from Earth to Saturn to Jupiter to Mars, and even tried to descend on Pluto, which is no longer a planet. But at no stage was there connection with the budget delivered by the Honourable Member for Christchurch East Central. He stayed far and wide. And while, sir, he accuses me of traveling the globe, he traveled the stratosphere. And Mr. Speaker, I'll come to that issue of travel today too, because this is a government that is determined to cut the contrast between what the country became accustomed to under the leadership of the last Prime Minister and what we determine to be minimum standards for this government. And I have said all along, sir, this government is not omnipotent. It is not omniscient. It doesn't know everything. But, Mr. Speaker, we come to work every day to do our best by the people of this nation. And we do so, sir, conscious that the mandate which was reposed in us has been a serious mandate. One, Mr. Speaker, that we don't take lightly. And perhaps, sir, if the honourable member who sits opposite was speaking from the perspective of a mandate, he might have spoken differently. But the mandate which he seeks to hold on to, even if in tattered form, is one that was delivered by a different party from which he leads today. And a member is entitled to do anything and to stand anywhere. But what he must never do is to pretend that something exists that does not exist. Mr. Speaker, sir, I am constrained at the outset of this speech to issue a disclaimer. And I ask your permission so to do, sir. Up front and center, I have been accused of being responsible for sending 2 members of the Barbados Labour Party to lead the Democratic Labour Party in George Street, to infiltrate the leadership. I want, sir, to publicly disavow now any such action on my part, and to tell you that if I had done so, an act which has been described by a leading political scientist as a dishonest solution to the leadership of the Democratic Labour Party, and that political scientist will have to explain why he believes that this is the case with these 2 members. But I want to tell you that if I were to do so, I would have to be guilty of the most reprehensible act. And I don't know how to be that way. And if there was any doubt in the minds of anyone as to why and how I could never do it, they would understand today, after 10 hours of a rambling concoction, that presentation unacceptable for a leader. They would understand that I would have to be wicked to do it. But you see, if you stood on the other side and you were a strong supporter of the Democratic Labour Party, you may really well believe today that I did send him to George Street. Because what paraded yesterday and today was a poor excuse for leadership and a clear intent to take the Democratic Labour Party that he has already decimated by 2/3 and now to want to leave it on the dump heaps of history. Mr. Speaker, sir, I will not tarry other than to say 1 or 2 quick things. There is a word called quidnunc. I'm not sure how many members on this side know it. I know the honorable member who praises himself for being a literary scholar must know what quidnunc means. Quidnunc. And I'm sure that the former leader of the Democratic Labour Party, who he aspires to be like, in fact, I'm told when he walked around in Swan Street today, a little youngster asked him if he was from Del Stewart, that he looked like him. That's not me. But quidnunc, for those who like to pride themselves on intellectual snobbery as they do, simply means a gossip. And we were given 10 hours of a bit of this and a bit of that, and I hear this and I hear that, and throw this and throw that, and innuendo. Mr. Speaker, if I did not know better, I would have now to pardon myself with my members here, because they don't like the word quidnunc, I'm sure. They would understand if I called them a pearly, a political pearly, a gossiper. And Mr. Speaker, I am going to come to 1 or 2 things because it was intended to solicit and titillate. And what do I mean, sir? Let me deal with one of them up front and center. Because this government has been very, very clear that we have not come to office to hide anything. We may not be perfect, but we are also not going to put against our record any attempt to hide. My members will tell you straight that I tell them all the time that Bill Clinton was not impeached for trying to have sex. Bill Clinton was impeached for lying. And that under no circumstances must that be part and parcel of our record. Indeed, sir, a friend reminded me before coming in here of 2 Corinthians chapter 4, verse 2. Rather, we have renounced secret and shameful ways. We do not use deception, nor do we distort the word of God. On the contrary, by setting forth the truth plainly, we commend ourselves to everyone's conscience in the sight of God. You're not like the honorable member who recites word alone. And why do I say so? Late last night, you heard that this government was paying someone $1 million for the year. As if we were doing something nefarious, thieving, and dishonest. Mr. Speaker, sir, to begin with, the numbers were wrong, but I'm not going to quibble on that. What the Honorable Leader of the Opposition was referring to was the engagement by this government of a person who previously worked for the OECD for 15 years as the head of the tax division. This honorable chamber has heard me say over and over that we are in danger if we did not remove ourselves from the gray list and the black list of having companies leave this country because those companies, insurance companies and others, for example, working in Europe, would not be able to do business there anymore if Barbados continued on these lists. Mr. Speaker, we took a decision early on to be able to move away from that kind of lurching from side to side and corner to corner with respect to our activities in Europe. We were also facing, sir, after the election of President Biden, a world that was committed to implement the global minimum tax, Pillar 1 and Pillar 2. And in October of 2023, we started a process engaged with him that led to corporate tax reform on our part. Mr. Speaker, in addition to that, we asked the same gentleman to work, and his team to work with international business and to revise our tax treaties. Barbados depends on a network of double taxation treaties, the avoidance of double taxation treaties to be more precise, and bilateral investment treaties. And there were changes that were absolutely necessary for us to have a credible platform for expansion of our tax treaty network. We asked, Mr. Speaker, for him to also work, as he is doing now, on repositioning us with our insurance and our funds industry to make sure that we remain competitive. We asked him, as I said, to work with corporate taxation, which meant working with the Barbados Revenue Authority. Mr. Speaker, the notion of persons working with us goes back to the days of the 1980s when a gentleman called Mr. Bruce Zagaris worked with us from government, both sides of the aisle, over and over. And Mr. Jeffrey Bell, who worked with the Central Bank of Barbados and was responsible for all of our engagements in the market across governments yet again. And Mr. Speaker, their briefs and costs would have been internationally competitive as this one was. In fact, the reality is that the only reason the leader of the opposition knows about this is because we did not hide and do it. It is available, sir, on the Bonfire platform, which is the platform that has been introduced by the new public procurement legislation passed by this government, making it absolutely clear that what we do and with whom we contract is completely openly available to the entire public. But, Mr. Speaker, I am not coming in here to ask you to walk by faith and not by sight, because that contract also allowed us to terminate another contract in Brussels, because the same entity, the same gentleman, now works with the ambassador at Brussels in the European Union. So he's working with BRA, he's working with Invest Barbados, he's working with the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, he's working with the Ministry of International Business, which is now the Ministry of Commerce. And Mr. Speaker, he is also working with the Barbados Defense Force, seeking to find financing at concessional rates for the repurchase, for the renewal of its Coast Guard fleet at concessional rates. Now, what would you believe? The company that worked for us in Brussels before was getting a loan for the simple job of Brussels alone, 15,000 euros a month as a retainer, and then to be paid anything on top of that. This gentleman, sir, with the company called SAGA, S-A-G-A, Santa Mar Global Advisory Services, who, by the way, is now the advisor to the G20 South African Minister of Finance in this year of our Lord as we speak. His contract is 70,000 US a month. Now, that 70,000 US should remind some people in here of 140,000 Barbados dollars. And it was the same leader of the opposition who sought to charge somebody that we know well, $140,000 for one case. And if you can charge $140,000 for one case that has nothing else to do and certainly ain't gonna last for a month, 41? Oh, so I'm so sorry. 141,000. That can't last a month, but would come in here to complain and to make it sound like scandal for a government to hire a distinguished global citizen who headed up the tax, worked with successive governments in Barbados, believed in the honor of this country. But you know what is the proof of the pudding, sir? I'm going to make it available to you. What did I say was his first job? To advise us on what? Corporation taxes. And Mr. Speaker, what are the facts? Last year, at the end of February, the government of Barbados had collected net corporation taxes of $349.8 million, pursuant to the reforms that he has worked with us on. Would you like me to tell you, sir, what the net corporation taxes in this country are tonight at the end of February? Mr. Speaker, would you believe that it is a whopping $837.5 million? Mr. Speaker, one person now to be made a victim of innuendo, telling members of cabinet, bet you all don't know about it. and whose actions, along with those in the Ministry of Finance and the Barbados Revenue Authority, and the Honourable Member for Christchurch East Central will tell you that he has been central not just to our decisions on revenue, but all of the conversations in the Joint Economic Group, and has been responsible in helping us to secure for the country almost $400 million more at the end of February. And we expect this number of 837.5 to increase somewhere along the way to over 900 million by the end of this month. Mr. Speaker, this is the kind of foolishness. And when I say that we need to cut the contrast, and I don't mean to be invidious or to get personal, but I have to make a point because young people in this country must learn and know better. I can only expect that he's not in here since he spoke because he spent over an hour and a half complaining about the fact that members held him to account. But he is to hold people to account for 10 hours and flee. I don't know what other animal flees. I don't know what animal gnaws at the end, at the edges. Gnaws.
Nor will we nod it.
But, Mr. Speaker, the reality is that I was ashamed as a Bajan when, in the course of the estimates debate in the Well, when the Ministry of Housing was here, the member for St. George South brought his team, and the chairman of Hope, who was here, and what was he regaled to? Who is he? And the kind of discourtesy that should never be associated with a member of parliament in this chamber. And Mr. Chairman, for what? Mr. Speaker, for what? Because he's a non-Barbadian? Mr. Speaker, the wife of the leader of the opposition works as a judge in a Northern Caribbean country. And I would hate to believe that anybody would want to treat her with the disrespect with which he has treated people in this honorable chamber. It is wrong. But yet he will want to quote the Bible, quote Shakespeare, be sanctimonious, tell us about moral decay, but forgets that discourtesy and disrespect cannot live in the same house with sanctimonious behavior. Mr. Speaker, it is wrong. And what we have therefore been presented in here was a full theatrical performance. I can't say it's a madman. You can say so if you want. But a full theatrical performance, in the words of the same Shakespeare that he loves, full of fury and signifying nothing. Sir, some people met me on my way here in the Parliament yard just now and asked me, but wait, he talked for 10 hours and he ain't said nothing. How you do that? That you work for 10 hours and you ain't got nothing to show for it at the end of the day? Sir, he berated and talked about the member for Christchurch East Central talking to the Deputy Prime Minister about a road in his constituency. You mean to tell me that he couldn't even ask for a few roads while he was talking for the 10 hours? You mean to tell me, sir, that the 10 hours couldn't relate to the condition of Bajan people, but the majority of it was to be able to show how wicked this government is, how corrupt this government is, how uncaring this government is? Mr. Speaker, that is his opinion. And I welcome him to keep it, but I know for sure, sir, that while he revels in theatrics, this government will continue to do the people's work. And Mr. Speaker, let me therefore come on to a few things that are absolutely critical. I took a decision this year, sir, to allow the member for Christchurch East Central to deliver the budget. The member for Christchurch East Central has worked alongside me for the last almost 7 years. I believe then, when I took the decision, as I do now, that he was the right person to do the job, that he had done all the heavy lifting, and that the confidence that I had in him and some of his colleagues, all of his colleagues who have it in him, had now to be shown why we repose our confidence in the member. And I think that I can say that the average Barbadian out there recognizes that this is not a one-woman government, that this is a government with depth, with capacity. And you heard during the 3-hour presentation or so, 3.5 hours, the honorable member take us through a very cogent presentation, premised on resilience, premised on growth measures, premised on revenue efficiency, and premised on cost of living and wellness measures. Mr. Speaker, it was balanced. And we've done it largely because, sir, we are in a position where the country has done well. You heard him say the central bank will report 15 quarters of straight growth in this country. Unemployment that is so low that the only number that we have ever gone lower was at the end of December 2007 under the then member for St. Peter, when it went to 6.7%. Debt, and he was very brutal and clear in showing you that contrary to those who only tell you about this government borrowing, that every year we have not only borrowed, we have paid back, and in total we have paid back more money than we have borrowed, and that does not include the restructured debt. Mr. Speaker, you know it and I know it. Every month, you just pay back debt and borrow some too. Every few months, you will go and say, I need a little line of credit with the credit union. But that don't stop you from paying down your mortgage. That don't stop you from paying back the car loan. This is real life. But when you have nothing else to hold on to, these things take on a size that is far greater than anything that we have. Sir, I want to commend to Barbadians the major change that we are making in the affairs of this country with the Resilience and Regeneration Fund. The Right Honorable Owen Arthur created the Catastrophe Fund, correctly so. But we recognize that it is now time to change that into a Resilience and Regeneration Fund. And we recognize that the sources of its funding must be secure for future Barbadians. Sir, if we get hit really bad by a hurricane or some other kind of major system, we have the natural disaster clauses that will unlock almost 20% of GDP, more than $2.5 billion over 2 years for us to step in and do what we have to do. But in the interim, when it isn't that large, as we had with Tropical Storm Kirk, as we had with Hurricane Elsa and Hurricane Beryl and the freak storm, we need to use this fund to be able to help us repair the houses, whether in St. Philip, whether in Christchurch, whether in St. Joseph, St. Andrew, St. Michael, St. Thomas, as we have been doing. And sir, the systems are not perfect because we're dealing with men and women. But we have tried to make sure that as far as possible, we have brought relief to those who were victims and who had no insurance. Now we know, sir, that we can't keep doing that out of the consolidated fund. And all that this tries to do is to say, a little with content is great gain. A person earning $2,000 a month will pay the equivalent of $5 a month. $5. Sir, less than most things. When you go in a shop now, you'll be looking to see what you can get with a $5 bill in truth. You might or might not get. I'm not advising people to buy 2 chocolates. But a bag of rice. Ensure. I want to advise people on the deputies. But the point is this, sir, that for $5, and what he has done in this budget is say, look, it shouldn't only be for people below the NIS maximum insurable earnings, that if you are earning $20,000, you should pay the equivalent of $50 a month. But $50 a month can't break nobody earning $10,000 a month. $20,000 a month, sorry. And what we have equally said is that employers should match it. Now, I've heard that some people say that the employers have said that this will lead to a cost through to consumers, and prices will go up again. Sir, it is not meant to pass through to anybody. If everybody don't leave a little on the table, you're going to pay for it when your time comes. And we learned it in COVID. People who thought that they would be good all of a sudden had no revenue. And let us go further, sir. The government hasn't said to employers, do it and we can watch you. We have said we will take 0.25% of GDP in this country and put it in the fund each and every year. Because we know what world we are living in. And we are therefore leading from in front. And what we have done is to move on what we have been arguing with the Bridgetown Initiative across the world. And thank God we have the example now of Germany to be able to make our point. Germany is facing a potential existential crisis because of its lack of access to defense under NATO, with the US doing what it is doing to Germany. And Germany now has to go and spend money on defense in a way that it has not spent for the last 80 years. Germany has said, we are going to spend this money on defense and don't mind what the fiscal rules, because Germany was the one who was the biggest one on applying the rules for fiscal rectitude in Europe. And they have said, don't mind what the fiscal rules say, we are going to put aside money every year in order to be able to defend ourselves. Well, what defense is to Germany, as the Honorable Minister said, is what climate is to us. And therefore, sir, I know that as leader of this country, I am doing something that will benefit Barbadians 5 years, 10 years, 20 years, 25 years, 30 years from now. And that it will not be the subject of the crowding out of the things that we must do for ordinary Bajans, because it will affect our numbers. We have said, leave it outside whatever else we do and put it there as the first claim on the government's expenditure every single year, because Barbados cannot survive if we end up ravaged by hurricanes, not by the large ones alone, but by the small ones that are niggling at us. Mr. Speaker, that resilience, therefore, is critical. We spoke, and others spoke in here, about cybersecurity resilience. The member for St. Michael South Central just spoke on it. Member for Christchurch East Central spoke on it. We live in a world that people have to be aware that these things are going to happen. And therefore we have to build up, and the cost of building up the protection that we need for our country is not cheap. It's not going to be cheap. We've asked for social resilience. You saw the measures that we took to give those who are vulnerable, the most vulnerable, disabled among us. And what the member did was to come in here and correct it and make it retroactive to October 2024, so that the children who are blind, who are mute, who are deaf, can also draw the contributions from the NIS, draw the allowances from the NIS, in the same way that we have made available to those who are autistic or suffering from multiple sclerosis, or indeed those who are adults who are suffering from, who are being mute or blind or deaf. Mr. Speaker, the resilience for water. The people in St. Lucie and St. Peter, and the member for St. Peter is correct. The people of Six Mens draw their water from the Allendale Reservoir as well. And they too are included in the 3,700 persons whom the government is prepared to accept responsibility for the 12 months while we build out new mains to deal with the rusty water from the rusty mains. And while we fix also the continued issues at the Allendale Reservoir. Mr. Speaker, this budget was intended, therefore, to build the resilience so that when things come at us left, right, up, down, we're in a position to bob and weave and survive and stand strong. Because if you get thrown down, how are you going to carry on? Mr. Speaker, not a word about that from the Honourable Member for Christchurch South. And even in terms of the fishermen, if we don't build resilience for them, and this is a government that has given them, in spite of no insurance for most of them, a 25% grant, and making available also loan funds if they need it, creating and putting in place business interruption benefits. Mr. Speaker, this is a government that not only cares, that acts as if it cares. We don't pretend. And Mr. Speaker, all of these things are available on public record. But you know what's wrong with the member for Christchurch South? He does not know government. He don't know the estimates. He don't know that. He stand in here for years. Refused to learn every March before the estimates. I carried the parliamentary party, and this year, the member for Christchurch East Central did it. And carried people through, how do you read the estimates? When he wants to know about how much my travel is, but you can only spend what you got, and you can only take it from operating expenses, so that at the very least you know what the outer limit is. But he doesn't have to do that, because I've come in here to make everything totally available to the people of this country. We don't hide. I told you, go back to Corinthians. 2 Corinthians chapter 4, verse 2. No, Mr. Speaker. But let me return to the budget. We recognize that we needed also to continue to tweak growth. Mr. Speaker, across every community in this country, a country that prides itself on the delivery of hospitality, is people cooking Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. And long are the days where tourists only went in established restaurants. Tourists go into communities in this country now. And this government looked at the revenue, looked at what the opportunities would be for persons who need to upskill and lift their game, and to be able to use commercial, industrial equipment so that they can turn around people quicker in their establishment. And Mr. Speaker, we have said that the same way we will treat the hotels, we're going to treat to you as small business people in this country. Because we see you as small business people, and we understand that if growth is to be inclusive, it can't only be at the macro level, it has to permeate down to the communities where people are. Mr. Speaker, we didn't only do it for this, we've done it for the small farmers. We've said, look, we know that a lot of people who are interested in poultry farming and who are interested in more vegetable farming to become climate resilient. Because we've seen in the last few years how difficult it is for persons to survive the drought and then the extraordinary rain and the pests that come with it and the decline in yields. And we've said, look, we're going to try something. And we're going to let the Barbados Agricultural Development Marketing Corporation, BADMC, access the funds from the Agricultural Development Fund. We're going to go public and invite proposals from persons, and we're going to choose 20 people for the poultry farms with the climate resilient tunnels that are needed for the poultry, and we're going to choose 20 for the climate resilient containers, vertical agriculture. Mr. Speaker, this is a government that sees people and is trying to lift them from where they are to the next level where they can literally pay forward for other people. This is not me coming in here. I could come in here and tell you about George Street or who don't belong to George Street no more, or who wasn't out there to greet him no more. But where does that leave you, sir? Where does that put money in the pockets of those who are suffering in this country, or those who want to move to the next level, or those who want to be competitive in exports? At each level, we have to move people to the next level. And that is what this government is about. How do we move people to the next level, regardless of wherever they are? Mr. Speaker, we did the same thing for the restaurants. Restaurants were complaining that hotels with restaurants have a competitive advantage by having duty-free access for alcohol, duty-free access for proteins. And Mr. Speaker, we have removed that disparity in this budget so long as those persons earn more than 60% of their income in foreign exchange. And we've had to do that, sir, because at the end of the day, there are still others that don't earn foreign exchange. And therefore, we would lose all of government's revenue if we didn't have a measure to be able to ring fence. Sir, we said that we want to boost CARICOM travel. We know that interregional travel has been beleaguered since COVID. We did it before, we're doing it again, but this time we're doing it for an extended period of 1 year, where we say reduce the air travel and tourism development fee for regional air travel from 35 US to 20 US. It may sound a little bit to people, but it is a lot to those who are traveling, especially traveling as a family. And much of Barbados' summer tourism is driven by regional tourism and family tourism from people coming from the other islands. Mr. Speaker, we indicated that to have growth, that we also felt that the monies which are aggregated in the credit union movement, that 25% of it should be allowed to participate in investments that hitherto they would not have been able to participate in, and that this is a platform for economic enfranchisement. Mr. Speaker, the credit unions belong to our people. We now have over 2.5 billion, and the Barbados Labour Party under Tom Adams was the one who spurred the growth of the credit union movement back from the 1970s, Mr. Speaker, with the tax incentives given then. Mr. Speaker, this minister, the member for Christchurch East Central, has been a strong defender of the credit union movement, and he has ensured that the same deposit insurance that we have to protect deposits in commercial banks by ordinary people will now be made available to the deposits in credit unions by ordinary Bajans. Mr. Speaker, I would not have minded listening to 10 hours talking about this, but that's not what we heard. Titillation and innuendo from a political lightweight, a political pearly. Mr. Speaker, we authorized in this budget the ability for credit unions in multiple forms to come together to participate so that they can reduce the exposure of the individual credit union. And Mr. Speaker, I hear all this talk, The Barbados Labour Party had a credit union called the Progressive League Credit Union. Been around for a while. You think when it came to us, it had some problems similar to other credit unions across the country? Did we hide? Did we seek to exclude the credit union? It suffered the same fate as the other credit unions that were not meeting the regulatory standards. I wish that that would have been the situation with CLICO. Mr. Speaker, for real. This budget recognizes that the banks in this country have a duty to be able to help us lift some weight in being able to de-risk the mortgages. And bear with me for 2 minutes, sir, because people need to understand why we are adamant. And I thank the member for St. George South for giving the facts as to the less than 800 houses built by the last government in 10 years, and the fact that we are almost at 1,300. But that is not good enough for me, and it is not good enough for most of us on this side. And we have determined that even though we are 50% higher in less time, including a pandemic that took out 2 to 3 years, than theirs in 10 years, that we need to be able to set ourselves some bold targets and to be ambitious. And what do I mean? If we can, in this country, sir, and work with me, build 2,000 houses per year between the private and the public sector, on average of about $200,000, and I'm using a low average because a lot of the houses that are being sold by the private sector are closer to 300 and 350 and 400. But the government is trying to maintain prices down as low as 150,000. and in some instances, possibly even lower if we can. But if you build 2,000 houses at $200,000 a piece per year, Mr. Speaker, that's $4 billion in activity in 1 year. $4 billion in economic activity, which works out to just under 3% of GDP growth. Now, Mr. Speaker, go through it. Work out that the contractors can make at least 15% out of that $4 billion. In 1 year, that's $600 million potentially in profit. The banks, they do better than everybody else because they're making not for that year, they're making for that year and 25 or 30, the banks and credit unions. The lawyers work out the fees, even if you cap it, as Hope has tried to do rather than using the law fees, the minimum non-contentious legal fees. You cap it at $2,500 a piece. $2,500 times 2,000 is $5 million in legal fees from one part of the equation. But the lawyer's also working for two others because you have lawyer for purchaser, lawyer for vendor, lawyer for the mortgage. Mr. Speaker? So you're talking a minimum of $15 million in economic activity to the lawyers. Do you understand the point I'm making? Then we start to talk about the truckmen. Then we start to talk about the laborers and the carpenters and the masons. Then we start to talk about the steel benders. Then we start to talk about all of the people who got to furnish the houses. Do you understand that that $4 billion in economic activity starts to mushroom by the time you now got to furnish the house and to do the other things? And Mr. Speaker, even though we have had issues and challenges with Hope, we have said we are not moving away from the objective because most things when they start have teething problems. And the teething problems must never be an obstacle to progress. Now, I am still going to have the departmental inquiry. But when the Auditor General chose to take the files to see whether anything was amiss in Hope, we said, let him go because we do not want to stop him in any way. And Mr. Speaker, we didn't stop him. And when he is finished, then the departmental inquiry will start. But I'm also sure that you will find that those teething problems are being corrected along the way, every step of the way. But where we are now, sir, is that we want to also target people who earning between $1,000 and $2,000 a month, $800 and $2,000 a month. People, Mr. Speaker, in our constituencies who might be selling nuts, who might be selling akis. They do it every day, but they don't have no regular place that you can see where their income is. Mr. Speaker, the Mortgage Insurance Act was passed in this country to be able to help us de-risk. And what we did under Barbados Mortgage Finance Corporation should be celebrated in the post-independence history of this country. The default rate was less than 3%. And when Republic Bank bought Barbados National Bank, it also took Barbados Mortgage Finance Corporation with it. And what has happened over the years is that 1.5% is added to the mortgage to be able to deal with it almost as an insurance premium. And Mr. Speaker, I want to make this a document of the House, because this shows that that approach, which has been used first by Barbados Mortgage Finance and now used by Republic Bank, has yielded and has in the fund almost $26 million, $25.590 million at the end of December 24. But Mr. Speaker, at the end of 2017, it had $31.7 million. And while some people had to draw on it when people were laid off, the real reduction came in December 2020, in 2020 and 2021 during COVID. So that this mechanism came to the aid of those banks, for those persons who could no longer pay their mortgages and for whom the mortgage insurance was available. Now, the Minister of Finance, Minister in the Ministry of Finance, Minister, member for Christchurch East Central, has indicated that rather than wait for banks and credit unions to apply, we are now going to designate across the board all banks and all credit unions to be able to use the Mortgage Insurance Act so we can de-risk more people in there. Mr. Speaker, what does this mean? That in so doing, that we can literally take off of government's balance sheet the obligation of building those houses and renting them to people and allowing people to be able to own them. We also know that as in the case of Hope, you're not only getting the $220,000 cash money as Hope is getting at Vespera Gardens, you're getting the assignment of the roof. So that the money that is to be made on the roof for 15 years will allow Hope to be able to recover its investment. But there has been hiccups, as I said. And what is the biggest hiccup? That the FTC has not put us in a position to be able to deal easily with the issue of batteries. And in the interim, the Light and Power reached grid instability, and without batteries, they can't bring other people into the system. Now, Mr. Speaker, that is why in this budget as well, we have said that the Smart Loan Fund of $15.3 million will now be made available to Bajans who went and bought PV systems, install them, but cannot get them connected because the Light and Power is not prepared to connect them because of the same grid instability and the batteries are not yet available. Sir, we expect to get the batteries by the end of this year, early next year. But in the interim, the people have to live. And therefore, we will take them on their loans on board, and we will give them a 1-year moratorium on payments until such time, sir, that they can start to earn money from it. Mr. Speaker, that is the kind of creative ingenuity that we have done here with this budget. The banks, we are asking to be far more proactive. And Mr. Speaker, banks that in this country, that in 2024, with pre-tax profits, have earned $208 million. 2023, $272 million. Retained after-tax profits, 2023, $257 million, 2024, $186 million. Mr. Speaker, they live in Barbados. They've got to start taking a chance on ordinary people in this country, and the Mortgage Insurance Act, in our view, is one of the ways to help de-risk the applicants and to give the banks greater prudential care as it relates to them. But I go further. The same banks, I hope, while I'm on the topic, will make it possible for people to open bank accounts in this country in quick order. We are embarrassed when companies come to this country and cannot get a bank account open in under 2 and 3 months. It has improved, I'm told, with Bajan individuals, but still, there are some who are complaining. I went in behind here at Royal Bank at 16 years old and opened an account in less than a half hour. And Mr. Speaker, our people must not be financial pariahs in their own country. That is what this budget is about, trying to make sure that it doesn't happen. Sir, we also address the issue, and in fairness, they say the minister, the member for Christchurch East Central can be a Scrooge, but there was no Scrooge-like behavior in this budget. And even though he knows how to collect taxes, he shared the burden across the board. The $10 levy. No, I ain't coming to that yet. The $10 levy for car rentals is not by any means disproportionate. People rent cars in this country for $100 and $150 a day. And Mr. Speaker, we've said to those who do not have H permits, come and make yourself right. There's no cap on them. But if you don't make yourself right between now and the end of June, then be prepared for penalties that will come. And as we talk about H cars, let me also address the issue of the habit of people using C plates as taxis, as ZRs, and as H cars. It cannot work. And the government is going to take a very dim view on people who seek to use the wrong category for purposes for which they were not intended. Sir, the minister will tomorrow, in the wrap-up, also address matters pertaining to administrative issues for late filings and penalties in this country to modernize the functioning of the Ministry of Finance. And I look forward to his doing so. But, Mr. Speaker, we recognize that one of the key issues constraining growth in this country is crime, is chronic NCDs, is lack of productivity. Sir, we are a cricketing nation, and we know that it isn't only the fours and the sixes that make and win the match. The leg buys and the buys and the no balls can cost you the match. And therefore, the actions of each and every Barbadian in terms of making sure that we can minimize the incidence of chronic NCDs in this country is important. We are spending too much money on healthcare in circumstances where people's well-being can be contained by the individual. And we are saying, look, in this cost of living environment, we're not going to tax salty foods at this point in time. We're not going to tax sugary foods any more than we've done. But we're going to have a strong public education program, because I don't like going to funerals and crying for people that gone. And people will go if they continue on a pathway that does not allow for healthy living. But in the interim, we don't need some of the snacks in the abundance in which we eat it. That everything is good in moderation. I ain't telling you don't eat nuts occasionally. I ain't telling you don't eat Pringles occasionally. But if you eat it once every 2-3 months, it's not the same as eating it every week or every day. And therefore, the excise taxes are intended to be a deterrent, but equally, they're intended to make it a little more expensive, so you don't want to eat it every day. Straight talk. And I believe, sir, that we can achieve that work together. You remember, for Christchurch, so does not see people, so does not care for people, that he described this budget as a conqueror's pedicure budget. Mr. Speaker, tell me, whose feet we trying to save in here? Feet from the people in the Republic of Tanzania, in Portugal. Mr. Speaker, Barbados is known as one of the amputee capitals because of the high incidence of diabetes. And Mr. Speaker, I make no shame in telling the country that I asked for this project. And you know why I asked for it? Because I'm tired, year after year after year, seeing men and women succumb to the loss of toes, the loss of feet, the loss of legs, suffering from sepsis, all because of uncontrolled diabetes, starting with what they consider normal behavior. They've been walking about barefoot all along. They ain't quite get it that they really need to take care of themselves. Some of them have never been for a pedicure in their life. And we need to get across the message that this is not a luxury, this is a basic need in order to have foot care in this country to protect limbs and lives in Barbados. And Mr. Speaker, the government has always been that entity that tries to shape behavior. You heard me speak about Tom Adams earlier and the credit union, and the fact that today we have a credit union movement with over $2.5 billion in savings. He did it with solar water heaters as well. It is almost inconceivable for us to build a house in this country without having a solar water heater. Mr. Speaker, I want the behavior to change. We may not be able to give them a pedicure every month or every 2 months, but if we start with people over 70 and the rest in the household see it, the rest in the household will get an idea of what they should be doing. And the person who like it and may get $100 or $200 from somebody overseas as a birthday gift, will say, I would like to do that little thing again because it felt good and my feet look real good. That is the kind of change of behavior that we want. But it is being poo-pooed. Remember, also address the issue of union dues. We have been very clear, and then could have the gall to come in here and talk about who's siding with big business. When, as the member for St. Peter said, when the legislation came in here for labor concessions to be able to ensure that hotel workers are not unfair in this country, the member for Christchurch South could not be found counting, supporting it. Mr. Speaker, don't judge us by our words. 10 hours of fluff and no action whatsoever. No, Mr. Speaker. Queen's Park is a little couple hundred yards up the road, not down here. Down here is the Parliament. He wants to be in Queen's Park Theatre. He wants to be acting. He got the wrong location. Mr. Speaker, this budget went ahead and said, look, to the hotel workers, there was a big problem in reaching the agreement on the issue of the meal allowances. The member for St. Michael West Central can tell you. And one of the issues was whether where people do not have the facilities to provide meals, whether when you provide the meal allowance at $20 a day or whatever they settled at, whether you would be able to guarantee that workers would not be put into a higher tax bracket and therefore be disadvantaged. Mr. Speaker, this is a government that sees and feels and hears people. And the hotel workers now can benefit from a non-taxable meal allowance that does not in any way compromise the gains that they have received. Mr. Speaker, I'm not plucking these things from midair, and I don't have to speak for 10 hours to show you how a government is making an appreciable difference in the lives of the people of this country. Sir, you mean when he crossed from Mars to Pluto, you mean he couldn't even see the maternity leave and the paternity leave? Not even from Mars to Pluto? Or from Jupiter to Saturn? No, Mr. Speaker. What madness is this? This country is walking. When we introduced minimum wage legislation in the middle of COVID, people told us, don't do it. It's going to bust. Mr. Speaker, we are now on the verge of having the minimum wage board recommend to the country what the revision should be from the $8.50 per hour. And Mr. Speaker, what the minister has done in the budget, the Honorable Minister has said, whatever they come in at, every year from now on, in between the major reviews of the National Minimum Wage Board, we are going to push you up 2% because you should not be faltering. Last year, inflation in this country was 1.4%. 1.4%. He wants to dispute that, just as he wants to dispute growth. He's now telling us about something called inflationary growth, as if he doesn't know the difference between nominal growth and real growth. But I'm not getting into those discussions with him, sir, because he distorts to confuse. He may well be confused too, but I give him the benefit of the doubt and say he distorts to confuse. I am saying to you, sir, that we have a budget before us that is well thought out. When I came here 2 weeks after this government was elected for the first time in 2018, I told the country that we would have to face $1 billion structural adjustment. And I said then, sir, that I was asking, just as I had told Madame Lagarde on the Thursday after the government came in, 6 days after, when we said we were going to the IMF, that you have to give people a little breakfast and that you have to create solidarity among your people. I asked the people of Barbados as Prime Minister to walk with us and to share the burden, and that the day that came where there was bounty, I gave the commitment that we would share bounty. Sir, at the beginning of this speech, I told you what the increase in corporation taxes is this year. I had hoped, sir, that we would have been in a position to make structural adjustments to the taxes. We are not in such a position to do so because, Mr. Speaker, you have seen, just as I have, over the course of the last few weeks, what has happened with the stock market and what has happened, Mr. Speaker, with people's sense of fear. We've had almost a 9% increase in the stock market. We do not know where the balance will end up on aspects of the global minimum taxation, Pillar 1 and Pillar 2. And even though we increased our tax rate to 9%, corporation-wise, it is the minimum top-up tax that is still to be taken. And there are still countries who have committed so to do, particularly in Europe, and like ourselves, and Canada. And therefore, this government took the approach, sir, that was taken in the past by Grantley Adams, by Errol Barrow, and by others, to treat to that more in the context of a windfall, and to use the increased earnings to help us stimulate growth, to help us pay down some debt, but in so doing, to also carry along Bajans in solidarity for walking with us in the last 7 years. And that is the genesis, sir, of the Solidarity Levy. That every Bajan must appreciate that they are being appreciated, and that we understand that over the course of the last 7 years, things have not always been easy. But that whenever we can, just as your parent or grandparent does in a household, and they have a little extra, they share it with you. That is the Bajan way, Mr. Speaker. And hence, the Solidarity Levy of $300 for every Bajan over 18 will be, who is ordinarily resident here in the last 12 months, will be undertaken. Those who work and who are in the NIS roll, or those who are pensioners, contributory or non-contributory, those who are on the invalidity benefit list, or those who are on the list of the Welfare Department, soon to be the Social Empowerment Agency, you need not worry, because the government has your information and therefore will push out the funds between now and the end of May. Those, however, who are not working or who are not on welfare will have to present themselves with their ID, with their proof of address, and the government will very shortly identify the locations across the island where you will come and give your information, and where the information then will be validated, and then thereafter you will get the funds either through direct deposit or, if necessary, through check. So, Mr. Speaker, that Solidarity Levy has its genesis in our commitment philosophically to walk in step with Barbadians, because rough times will come again and bountiful times will come again. But we succeed when we move collectively as a people, rather than outside with 1-1 here and 1-1 there and 1-1 there. And therefore, Mr. Speaker, we keep faith with the people of Barbados with this Solidarity Levy. The last initiative was in the budget related to how do we make ourselves look better for our 60th birthday, 60th anniversary. Because from the 1st of December this year, well, my birthday is, I'm 60 this year, but the country is formally 60 next year. But like with everything else, the anniversary starts on the day after the 59th anniversary finishes. And therefore, from the 1st of December, the country will embark on its 60th birthday celebrations. And we believe that in preparation for that, that we would like the place to look a certain way, and that we would want people to be able to paint their houses and to have the gardens look in a certain way. We will have a competition that will be parish-based, but equally will be national-based among the best in the parishes. And that we will also have the best community and not just the best individual house. But what are we doing when we're doing all of this, sir? We're making sure that people who can paint and people who can do a little work helping in landscaping, and people who can change a few boards, because you can't only change paint on boards that can't take the paint, that they are getting a little money coming to them too, in the same way. A little trala, as Dame Billy would say. And Mr. Speaker, therefore, when we speak about inclusive growth, the budget is dotted with things from the podiatry project to the painting project to the no VAT or duties on the commercial kitchen equipment. And Mr. Speaker, we didn't stop there. The minister laid out for you all the things we did to reduce cost of living in this country. And then he went on to tell you about all the other things. Because, Mr. Speaker, on top of what we left there, tell me what else you're getting. Stew beef. The VAT getting take off of that. Remember Ingham, remember for Christchurch, South Ingham talk about that because he don't care whether families really can afford to buy food or not. Minced meat, minced pork, minced turkey, Vienna sausages, Horlicks. I don't like Horlicks. If people ask about Milo, but I think Milo on the list already. So Horlicks is only an addition. Sega, lentil peas, split peas, pigeon peas, and black-eyed peas on the list already. So that, Mr. Speaker, we expanded the list of items to make it easier for every Bajan household, accessing protein from stew beef to the minced meat, to the minced pork, to the minced turkey, to the lentil peas. And for those who talk about fresh fruit, Mr. Speaker, we said take off the duties off of the Orteniques and the not just the oranges that were there before, the Orteniques and the mandarins, the plums. The grapes already have it off. The grapefruit already has it off. Mr. Speaker, the pineapples and the pears, not the Bajan pears, but the pears that you get from overseas, what they call it, the Bosch pears or whatever they call it. Mr. Speaker, this is a government that is meeting people where they are, not where they want to be put into a box by a leader of the opposition. These are real facts. This is not innuendo. These are things that are subject to become law under the provisional collection of taxes, and we're not so after. And Mr. Speaker, I haven't even talked about the Barbados Ocean and Coastal Authority and the fact at which we are reducing our beaches through erosion. And that if we don't stop it, that is what pays our bills, Mr. Speaker. Don't let's get tied up. We learned it in COVID when we had no tourists come. It didn't only affect hotels and hotel workers, it affected the farmers. Member for St. Philip South will tell you that. It affected the people who drive the trucks. The member for St. James South will tell you that, who deliver all the produce to all the small shops all across the country. Everybody was affected. And Mr. Speaker, not a word on those initiatives from the member for Christchurch South. Mr. Speaker, his interest relies only on political parallelisms and scandal, innuendo, no context. And we are going to cut the contrast. Mr. Speaker, he wants to talk to you about me traveling over the globe. Mr. Speaker, I don't travel for holiday. I travel in the name of the people of this country to be able to secure benefits. And Mr. Speaker, I challenge anyone to dispute our record. But for the avoidance of doubt, sir, I have asked my office to prepare my travel for every single year. From 2018, when I first went to St. Lucia for the OECS, and CARICOM heads immediately thereafter, right down through to 2019, 2020, 2021, 2022, 2023, 2024, and yes, Mr. Speaker, 2025. 2025 alone is a perfect example. All the talk. Middle of March, I went out for 2 days. In fact, it was 1 day, one night. So that the cabinet paper may reflect 2 days, but I went for 1 night to Suriname as chairman of CARICOM to give a speech. I went to UAE to receive the Zayed Award, and I know that that will be contentious, but guess what? Not a cent at the cost of the government of Barbados, either for airfare or hotels. And Mr. Speaker, I could have refused it, I suppose. Mr. Speaker, when I went to Africa, to Lagos, UAE, to the World Government Summit, where as chair of the V20 Forum, where I chair 70 countries of the world who are seeking to be able to build climate resilience, to deal with debt and to deal with health-related matters to climate, spoke at the World Digital Summit, and then went to the Africa Union as chairman of CARICOM. And Mr. Speaker, because of the fact that I also spoke on behalf of an entity with whom we had been working for the last 3 years in Barbados because of people who had died in a plane crash, we did not pay for that early part of it, and that entire trip cost $18,229.60. For the entire year, my travel has come to $19,660.95. It's March only, you may say. But let's go. You go on each of them. I have done the total, and in 7 years, the total amount comes to just about $1.457 million across 93 trips, with an average of $15,000 per trip, Mr. Speaker. I don't travel first class. I go at the last possible minute and return at the earliest possible minute. I do not stay in luxury suites, as was the wont of many a minister before this government came into office. And Mr. Speaker, everything is here. Attendance, look at all of them. If it isn't CARICOM meetings, it is the UN meetings. If it isn't the UN meetings, it is the COP meetings. If it isn't COP, it is individual meetings that require us security. On occasion, I have done 1 or 2 speeches. And Mr. Speaker, if I were only spending money, I wouldn't mind. You might curse me. That 1.45 million, you know what I asked the PS to prepare for me too, sir? What are the benefits in terms of grants that this government has gotten as a result of that travel? Mr. Speaker, would you believe that this government, and I'm going to be fair, because when the ministry prepared this, they included one figure that came at the beginning of 2018, and I don't have nothing to hide. So I told the minister, take that $27 million out. 27.6 million and 83,000. Take it out. So subtract that from $146,887,000 in grant money. Not loans. Mr. Speaker, you know what grant money is? It's free. When you walk out of Parliament, Mr. Speaker, fella there, give me $20 there. That is free money. And Mr. Speaker, what is the grant money for? Mr. Speaker, we got this government, and it is fortuitous. And I want to thank them on behalf of the people of Barbados, because as we meet in Parliament tonight, the Sustainable Energy for All Conference from the United Nations, with over 1,300 registered participants, was opened in this country today and will continue tomorrow. Mr. Speaker, among the people who have visited, and I want to salute our brother, the President of Sierra Leone, who is here as well, the Deputy Prime Minister of Tanzania, the Minister of Finance of Nigeria, the former Vice President of Nigeria, the former Second Lady of Ghana, but among them were also heads of entities. And fortuitously, the head of the Green Climate Fund is in the country for the first time as we have this debate in this Parliament today. Mr. Speaker, for those who don't know, the Green Climate Fund is in the area that I have been given the opportunity to be an advocate for globally, which is on climate. And that is where we've gotten the majority of grants. And that is where we go to the COP. And that is where, when we carry the delegations that he's talking about, between the Inter-American Development Bank and other entities, help to pay for those delegations. Why? Because they want to hear the voice of Barbados, because the voice of Barbados has been strong, has been credible, and has pushed the envelope. Mr. Speaker, people talk now, globally, about natural disaster clauses. Mr. Speaker, if I didn't have natural disaster clauses that could unlock $2.5 billion over a 2-year period in the event of an emergency, we would not be talking about 0.25% in a regenerative and resilience fund. We would have to be putting in 2 to 3%. But Mr. Speaker, we have that. And the first thing we got, the print small, boy. 60 coming on and through. In 2022, because of the work that we put in from day one in 2018 and 19, and it continued to do even during the pandemic, this country was awarded $39.4 million US. That is 79.8. No, 78. $78.8 million Barbados dollars. Mr. Speaker, who's give us $79 million in grant? But you think that's all that they gave, sir? They came back again. And you know what that was for? Because I ain't jumping over this money because people can say, I know what that money for. That money is to upgrade the Bridgetown sewage treatment plant. You know, the people in the member for the city of Bridgetown who were complaining about how that plant is operating, all the negative orders and all of them things that they've been suffering from. It is then to take pipes from that plant, or let me put it another way, the pipes are coming down from the bell to that plant for thousands of Bajans. Remember, for St. Michaelis has come in here and made a cry year after year after year after year about the fact that his constituents cannot get security of tenure, cannot go out to the bank and borrow cent one because they are not connected to the sewage system. They don't have the ability to have toilets, waterborne facilities. Nobody is going to give them planning permission. Mr. Speaker, I talk about the member for St. Michaelis, but it also includes, Mr. Speaker, the residents of Bellevue, represented by you, Mr. Speaker. That grant money helps us there. Mr. Speaker, the debt for climate swap that he still cannot get his head around. Another 80 million Barbados dollars coming in grant funds, helping his constituency in Christchurch. So, but the truth, he does not have a constituency anymore. Why are we fooling ourselves? Remember, for St. Michael South Central reminded him that at least she knows where she's running. He didn't know where he's running, and she was absolutely correct. Because I never know how a leader can go to an executive council meeting and approve 15 candidates and cannot get himself approved. Because the people tell him, don't put your eyes on St. John. That's where he won't run, because he believes that simply by saying, I am the leader of the Democratic Labour Party, that greatness shall be conferred upon me in St. John. Well, remember, for St. John and the rest of St. John got news for him, including the people who work for him in the opposition office. No, Mr. Speaker. Let's go on. Do you understand what $146,887,863.49 is? Mr. Speaker, this is an old political playbook. It is true that he is almost 70, but he can at least pretend to live in a modern world. And the bottom line is, sir, that this notion of nickel and diamond Bajans and making people feel that because you call 70,000 US, yes, it is a lot of money to people who are at the bottom, and we know that that is why this government is working so hard to be able to help people lift themselves out of poverty and lift themselves from lower middle income status and lift themselves from middle income status. But don't believe that you can do the country's work. This is not a rum shop. This is not a community shop. This is not a community center. This is not even a law office. But he believes it's okay for a law office to charge $141,000 for one case, but a country can't buy the services that it needs globally to keep it alive and stable and up. Mr. Speaker, this government will govern. And we will govern in the interests of the people. Our record, both good and bad, will stand to be judged by the people of Barbados. We've never veered from that. And that is why I've said that the words in Corinthians will continue to be embraced by us. Because, Mr. Speaker, I have not come to public life to do anything other than to represent people and to allow people in this country to be the best that they can be. And, Mr. Speaker, when we go and travel and we make the cases, nobody used the natural disaster clauses until we, at scale. Before us was Seychelles and Grenada. But Barbados became the largest issuer of natural disaster clauses. We took up the battle of telling the world in the Bridgetown Initiative, do it. One of the things and the trips that he quarrels with me for is being in Paris with the President of France when the Bridgetown Initiative spurred on the Pact for People and Planet that has been globally accepted and that recognizes now that the World Bank will in fact give debt pause clauses, the same thing, because you know once we name it, the North Atlantic countries is rename it. Debt pause clause is a natural disaster clause. And the countries across the world from the Pacific, from Vanuatu and Samoa, to the countries in the Caribbean, to the countries in the Indian Ocean, to countries in Africa, to countries in Central and Latin America, because of the advocacy of the Bridgetown Initiative. When we went to argue for ourselves, clearly we were arguing for others in the developing world. And we have brought them along with us. And whereas 2 years ago a hurricane hit them, or a cyclone hit them, and they can do nothing and got to still pay. Let me tell you about Dominica. We all remember Hurricane Maria. Dominica, in the midst of early recovery from that hurricane, sir, had to be looking to pay debt back to the World Bank when it could not even find money to give people to feed themselves in Roseau and all across Dominica. Mr. Speaker, that is what this travel has done. Mr. Speaker, I don't do it in my name. Anybody who knows me knows I don't even like you to introduce me with a CV and a resume. I tell you, call my name and let me jump on the stairs. That is me. But the reality is, Mr. Barrow said in the 1970s, early 70s, when he was assailed with the same allegations about travel, you cannot stand in Bay Street and earn money for the country. You cannot stand in Bay Street and earn money for the country. The same gentleman who leads the party may do well to remember that. But he should also go in Hansard, and I ask the Clerk of Parliament to carry for him the next time he condescends to come in here after this speech, after this debate, and carry for him the Hansard record where Mr. Barrow said that anybody who does not believe in debt financing, deficit financing, is anti-developmental because people that look like us didn't start with capital. He didn't say that, but he added that last part. There are very few people in this country who can build a house out of cash. We have to go to the bank and borrow. We have to incur debt. But we spread the debt over 20, 30 years so that when we finish, we can afford to pay it back. Mr. Speaker, I do not intend to hold this house any longer. But I have tried to come here to cut the contrast. I have tried to come here to show you a government that has brought a budget that is premised on the promotion of resilience, because we must protect our people's lives, limbs, and livelihoods against both the climate crisis, against crime, and time will come for me to speak on that again, against the vagaries of physical and mental infirmities. We have come here, sir, to promote growth across different sectors, not just in large hotels, because we already have 6 hotels building with thousands of jobs. But we have also come to protect hotel workers, and we've come to protect those who need to be able to be part of a credible hospitality industry by making commercial industrial kitchen equipment affordable to them. We've come here to level the playing field with restaurants. We've come here to make our agricultural sector more climate resilient. We've come here, sir, to bring our credit union movement into the realities of a modern Barbados by ensuring that they have access to deposit insurance and by ensuring that they can pool together and that they can now invest in areas of activity that they were not able to do it before. We've come here to ease the cost of living by increasing the basket of goods without VAT and without import duties. We've come here, sir, to be able to ensure that we can bring new rules for maternity so that this nonsense that people can't draw maternity if they live alone benefits. And we've now added to it by being gender sensitive. Yes, Mr. Speaker, it has taken a woman to lead a government to give men paternity in this country. That is how it should be. Mr. Speaker, we have come here to bring a budget that might try to right-size where we can take revenue by spreading the burden. When we came here, we were the ones who said, increase the passenger travel tax, because if we don't, the taxes that we have to put on Bajans and their households and on their income will be unbearable. And Mr. Speaker, with all that we are doing, we have not imposed an increased income tax on anybody in this country since 2019 for the last 6 years. Mr. Speaker, this is a record that any government, any part of the world would envy to have. Is it perfect? No, it is not. And we never pretend to be perfect. And Mr. Speaker, I can come in here and I can talk about how we try to correct corruption. I can tell you about ministries where people, Mr. Speaker, were paying out monies without checking that the work is being done. I have the records too, sir. But I have not come in here to treat Parliament as a political cesspool. And if there are credible cases to be made for corruption, even when people rush and retire from the public service before they get found, not me, I don't lock up nobody, that is a matter for elsewhere. But we have all of that here. I haven't come here to tell you about the consultants in the last government who were drawing hundreds of thousands of dollars, sir. Because I understand, sir, that you cannot run a government just so. It is not a corner shop. And Mr. Speaker, I'm not going to disrespect the people of Barbados by acting in a way that prevents us from delivering from them. And the problem in the last administration, I'm going to be blunt now, the last Prime Minister has to take responsibility. Because even when the last Minister of Finance wanted to be able to restructure the state-owned enterprises, as he announced at the speech at the Chamber of Commerce in 2010, it was the last Prime Minister that put brakes on him and said he believed in a previous philosophy. He lives in the 1950s, 60s, and 70s, and they have not come in anywhere close to the 21st century. And Mr. Speaker, I'm not suggesting that philosophy changes, but the reality is that people lost their jobs, lost their homes. The last decade was thrust upon us, and this country became the 3rd most indebted in the world. And I'm saying to you, sir, it has taken careful stewardship. There are things that we are doing now that I wanted to do 4 and 5 years ago, but the COVID pandemic stopped it. I give this country the assurance that as long as I am your leader, as long as I have responsibility for this Barbados Labour Party government, that there is nothing called hiding. And if you want to be able to titillate people with 6 and 7 figures, then titillate them with the 9 and 10 figures too. Don't only tell them about the cost of travel, tell them also about the benefits. Because women leave home every morning and know that they've got to spend bus fare to go to work. And they're spending the bus fare before they draw the salary. So if you want to reduce it to its lowest level, shopkeepers know that they've got to go in town and get credit in order to be able to get back the produce and product to be able to sell to earn the money. Mr. Speaker, a government is no different. We don't engage, and if we only concentrated on this 166 square miles, sir, we would not earn to be able to relieve ourselves of the burden of the recession that we inherited from the last government. And Mr. Speaker, it has been through the careful nurturing of relationships, through the advocacy that we have put on the table, through the engagements, that we have been able to bring benefits in terms, and I haven't even started to talk about the concessional loans. I only talk about the grants, because I don't want to spend 2 and 5 and 10 hours in here to tell you things that Bajans already feel naturally. Every Bajan knows that things are better in 2025 than they were in 2018 when we came to government under the last administration. And I end on this point. He says that I'm a demon. He says that I'm a dictator. Well, Mr. Speaker, I am now going to go in the Guinness Book of World Records because I have never known a dictator to allow marches up and down Broad Street every 2 weeks. I have never known a dictator to allow speeches and all kinds of protests on everything. I have never known, Mr. Speaker, a dictator to allow a leader of the opposition 10 hours on national television. And Mr. Speaker, in so doing, we changed the rules of this parliament. Because for as long as my memory can carry me back, the leader of the opposition was only ever entitled to broadcast time equal to that of the minister presenting the budget. Mr. Speaker, we said, let him talk. Let him talk. Because the more people understand what is the contrast between what is offered here on record and what is offered there in theatrics, the more people will appreciate that they must not repeat the mistakes in their recent past. They went for change for the sake of change, and they ended up with a lost decade. Sir, we're not yet in an election. As much as he's calling it, he don't even have a seat to go on canvas. I have chosen to spend my time here not prosecuting the people who work in his office, who should be prosecuted for selling or trying to sell a house for $8,000 when the house was valued at $60,000 with a for sale price of $50,000. I haven't come in here for those things, sir. I ain't calling nobody name. But I have come in here to remind this country that if ever there was a time that has been perilous since independence, and if ever there has been a time that has been perilous since World War II, it is the world in which we live today, sir. It is the world in which we live. This matter with the Cubans and the nurses should tell us everything that we need to know. Barbados does not currently have Cuban medical staff or Cuban nurses, but I will be the first to go to the line and to tell you that we could not get through the pandemic without the Cuban nurses and the Cuban doctors. I will also be the first to tell you that we paid them the same thing that we pay Bajans, and that the notion, as was peddled not just by this government in the US, but the previous government, that we were involved in human trafficking by engaging with the Cuban nurses was fully repudiated and rejected by us. Now, I don't believe that we have to shout across the seas, but I am prepared, like others in this region, that if we cannot reach a sensible agreement on this matter, then if the cost of it is the loss of my visa to the US, then so be it. But what matters to us is principles. And I have said over and over that principles only mean something when it is inconvenient to stand by it. Now, we don't have to shout, but we can be resolute. And I therefore look forward to standing with my CARICOM brothers. I wish I could say brothers and sisters, but brothers, to be able to ensure that we explain that what the Cubans have been able to do for us, far from approximating itself to human trafficking, has been to save lives and limbs and sight. for many a Caribbean person. So, Mr. Speaker, I hope the contrast has been clear for all to see. We will continue in the service of the Barbadian people where there are things to answer, and I learned this as a young Minister of Education and a young Attorney General, that you cannot know what every single person in your ministry is doing. But where things are brought to our attention, we will act. Where there are things that he says that make sense as leader of the opposition, we will equally act. And I wasn't planning to do this, but I feel I have to do it, if only because that this nonsense and charades and parade of foolishness must stop. This government invited the leader of the opposition to serve on the Advisory Council of Citizen Security. He told us, and Cabinet Secretary, that he would be there on the Friday. The Attorney General would recall, the member for the city would recall, at the meeting that we had at the Lara Court. Only then, and he told me that he just wanted to have a conversation with his members of his party, but yes, he would serve. Mr. Speaker, he repudiated that agreement. No problem. These things happen. I know what it is to lead a party, but people have different leadership styles. Many of you saw me go behind the Speaker's chair 3 weeks ago. And I said to the member for Christchurch South that I really would like the opportunity for the members of the Ministry of Education to present to him what we propose to carry to Cabinet and what we propose to carry to the country. Because the only remaining issue, as the Minister said in his budget speech, is really the mechanism for transfer from primary to secondary. And because, and he could remember good, I said it last night, that from September 2026, that we would be seeking to have new arrangements put in place. Mr. Speaker, we arranged that he would bring a delegation, he said 4 or 5 people, and to have lunch in a private dining room in Parliament and to have the presentation made. The Chief Education Officer came, the Permanent Secretary came, the ministers were present. When I went downstairs, I saw him with most of his delegation at the other end of the dining room, and I went and said, but the others are inside waiting for you. He said, no, we can't make that today. We can't make that today. I said, tomorrow? He said, no. Former Minister of Foreign Affairs was standing up over him. I don't know if he was waiting for guidance from her. I said, next week? He said, man, I'll talk to your PS. And I left it, only to go and have to report to the public officers who had the presentation on the screen that he was no longer coming. Mr. Speaker, we took a photograph of Parliament here last Wednesday morning, and in the presence of the senior minister with responsibility for social sector and environment, Minister of Health, and myself, and one other person, I said, Ralph, sorry, I shouldn't have called his name. Can we do next week? His response to me was, you back with that thing again? Verbatim. Mr. Speaker, I would have hoped never to have to do this. But this charade must stop in this country. And I told him then, and I say it to the country publicly, there are 2 things that I believe should not divide political parties in this country because of their long-term nature: education reform and crime. Sir, none of us knows for whom the bell will toll. I, in spite of all of that, make this government available to a team from the Democratic Labour Party, even though my members feel that I am being stupid in reaching out and having an olive branch each time. And you know why? I spent 7 years in the Ministry of Education, and I spent 5 years as Attorney General with responsibility for fighting crime in this country. And I know, I don't think, I know it requires a whole-of-government approach in each instance. And if we are to truly carry this country to the next level, then this nonsense about trying to treat everything in a partisan manner. I said, abuse me on everything. Abuse me about the travel. Abuse me about housing. Abuse me about whatever you want. Use me about the budget. Yeah, I'll deal with my end, talk about it. Use me about anything. But on these two matters, for the sake of the children and the young people of this country, for the sake of the elderly people of this country who may feel unsafe in communities, let us sit down and have a national pact. And I want to say to the media, you have sought, correctly so, to play a correcting role against this government because you say that the people gave us 30 seats each time. And we have made ourselves, as Prime Minister, I reduced the powers of Prime Minister, never done before. I no longer can choose a head of state. I no longer can choose Supreme Court or Court of Appeal judges. And only recently, we have agreed to bring in here that instead of me being able to designate and have cabinet agree to the renaming of places and buildings and parks and locations, I said no. Send it to the National Honors Committee, on which the opposition has membership. And Mr. Speaker, a bill will come in here now soon to confer national honors automatically on the Chief Justice, on the Chief of Staff, on the Commissioner of Police. And I have forbid my cabinet from putting the Prime Minister in there because I don't want to be in there. But the country must do the right thing by the other posts in this country. And I say these things, sir, because I sense with the gray hair that I have and the age 60 creeping in on me quickly, that there are certain things that are worth standing for. I used to sit at the end of this front bench next to the then member for Christchurch South. The then member for Christchurch South. He was conferred with the honor and dignity of being able to sit on the front bench by the Prime Minister and Parliament, even though he was not in cabinet. And he said to me, and I've said this over and over, he said, young girl, a time is going to come when you're going to have to legislate everything in this country because the conventions that people hold by will no longer hold. We saw an example of it with the 10-hour speech in here today because it was an abuse of privilege. And the last time it happened, in the early 70s, and I've asked the clerk to research it, my father has told me about it many a time because he was a member of this chamber between 1969 and 1976. And the estimates in those days would go on and on and on and on. And it went on so long. And the only thing that stopped it after 2, 3 o'clock a Friday night into Saturday morning was cricket at Kensington Oval. And Mr. Barra took the opportunity then to change the rules and impose what we then came to know for over 40 years with the guillotine coming down on the heads. So there's no open-ended debate because everybody recognizes that time is money. What Mr. Barra didn't do was to change and put a time limit on second reading speeches. But the clerk has advised us that almost most modern parliaments have time limits. Now, we never had to be forced into that position because even when men give, and even me on occasion give 4 and 5 hour speeches, that it was never to the point where it went on and on and on. But this parliament, Mr. Speaker, and you are to be commended for it. You did not even remind him of his persistent breaches of the rule with repetition. And there were certain things I heard at least 8 and 9 times in the 10 hours. And Mr. Speaker, I don't say this because I am closer to the end of my public career than I am to the beginning. And I say so for the benefit of those who must come. When you go before the United States Supreme Court, you have 30 minutes to make your case on matters that affect life. In the International Court of Justice, the honorable member for St. James Central just came back. You have 15 minutes. Mr. Speaker, this is a serious country. This is a serious parliament, the 3rd oldest in the Commonwealth. I pray that if nothing else comes out of this debate, that it will be a commitment to elevate the seriousness with which we treat to this annual exercise of estimates of expenditure and budgetary and economic proposals. I believe that we've tried to keep our course on this matter. And I trust and pray that the members of the country will understand when we go in now to a fourth day, because I do not believe that it is fair on the workers of Parliament, on the police, on the people who service Parliament, to ask them to remain, and certainly to those who have been doing yeoman service with signing, to be able to ensure that all of our people understand and appreciate. And I've therefore asked, we will go probably for another 45 minutes to an hour, and we will shut off tonight, and we have taken the decision to postpone Cabinet tomorrow to facilitate the conclusion of this debate, because the people must be allowed to hear their representatives in this annual appropriations bill, which is the centerpiece of the financial year in our Parliament. And if Cabinet has not to be able to meet tomorrow to facilitate this debate because of the 10-hour speech, so be it. We understand the games and the theatrics, and we understand that the only place he was interested in going when he left here was to walk about town, because he is more interested in the likes than the love for it. Well, Mr. Speaker, this government is in it for the love of it and not simply the likes. I want to commend this budget, and I want at the very end to say to Barbados that if something should happen to me, God forbid, tomorrow, I know that I have left in your hands a capable, a confident young man who has acquitted himself with distinction as the member for Christchurch East Central, but equally as the minister in the Ministry of Finance. And I will tell you the truth, that the only thing standing in his way between now and being fully Minister of Finance is the fact that we come out of an IMF program in May or June of this year. And we're going to have to go to the market for the first time since this government has come to office. And while I do not claim any major things, I do know that I have a bit of credibility internationally. And I do believe that I need to leverage that credibility for the benefit of this country in terms of our re-entry into the market. Once I am satisfied that I have done so, I will have the greatest pleasure in removing from myself the portfolio of Ministry of Finance.